Hey, what is up guys, you got Gypsy and I'm back with another really exciting flak build for Borderlands 3. In today's video, I'll be showing you guys Nuclear Desolation Flak, and this is a build that a good friend of mine, DarenLee, actually sent to me. You know, he'd been working on the build, he sent me the gear to try out. I tried it out and I loved it so much that I had to make this video for you guys. So this build is absolutely incredible. This is the best gamma build that I've ever seen and played myself in this game. It really is a cut above the rest, and I'm going to be showing you guys just how crazy this build can get. So a bit of background on Daren. He's an avid Gamma Flak player, so he's a long time player of Gamma Flak. We discuss different builds and different ideas around Gamma focused Flak quite a lot. He's a big trader in the community, real positive force, and he's an avid build designer. So show some love to Daren in the comments below. If you guys enjoy this video, if you enjoy the build, if you try it out for yourself, which I definitely recommend, and you enjoy it, let Daren know in the comments. I'd love to see some of that sort of community feedback. But guys, this build is crazy. So we're going to kick it off. This is not going to be one of those Gamma focused builds that focuses on stacking corrosive and cryo damage on action skill end along with all the radiation damage. This build is focused on radiation damage, and that may sound a bit strange at first. You may think, well, how do you eat through armor? Armor typically stands in the way of radiation focused builds, but on this build, just the yellow health bars just melt away. So it gets pretty crazy, as you're going to see. But there's a few different options for gear for weapon choices. If you can't find one, there's going to be substitutes, and we're going to get into that. But this is such a fun build. It really taps into how I feel Gamma Flak is supposed to be played, really tapping into that radiation, nuclear sort of detonation sort of style that Flak can really pull off. So we're going to kick it off with the first gear choice here, and we're actually using the Insider, and the Insider was actually introduced in the second DLC. For those of you guys who may not have played it, it's an amazing new Melawan shotgun. It's got the alien barrel, much like the Protuberance, which is also on our list of gear. And when you first start using it, it may seem a bit underwhelming. It may seem a bit strange. There's a bit of a learning curve with it. You have to sort of get used to the sweet spots and firing at enemies. But once you get that, this gun is incredible and really can replace or even outdo the Protuberance in a lot of situations. And if you guys know me, if you guys have been watching my channel for a while, you'll know that the Protuberance has a very special place in my heart on my Splash King Flak builds. It's the centerpiece for those builds, and it is also on this build too. But the Insider is a fantastic new piece of gear that is a lot easier to come by than the Protuberance, so this is a pretty easy farm in the DLC. It's dropped quite frequently, and it can be farmed from the two mini bosses in the Heart's Desire pretty easily. So very, very useful. Now you'll notice here we are using the time 12 variants, and this is going to consume more ammo per shot, but the increased pellet count makes a big difference in terms of DPS. If you can find a higher pellet count, the better. Honestly, for this weapon, you're going to be having more chances to proc Megavore, which is going to in turn proc head count and leave no trace, which is huge for cooldown and ammo regen, and it's going to give you more DPS essentially. So that's a big one. But you're going to be looking for one with radiation. The secondary element isn't actually used on this build, but it can certainly be good if you can come across one in fire, corrosive, or cryo. That's definitely going to serve you well if you ever want to switch up. But yeah, the whole focus of this build is that you don't need to switch up to something like corrosive or cryo, because the radiation damage you're doing is so absurd that yeah, everything melts away. So the Insider, fantastic gun, lots of fun to use. Next up we have the Protuberance here. Now, like I said, the Protuberance is definitely one of my favorite guns in the game. It's so much fun to use. It does have a learning curve with the Insider, and something I recommend when using both the Insider and the Protuberance is getting used to jumping, getting vertical with these guns and firing them down, understanding how the parabolic shape of the bullet pattern works with these guns is pretty key in getting the most out of them. Once you play with them for about 20 minutes, half an hour, you sort of get used to the trajectory of the weapon, and you can time it pretty well. Like, you can get some crazy long distance kills with this if you get the sweet spot correct. The Protuberance and the Insider are both going to do huge amounts of splash damage, and that is why we're wearing the red suit, which is quite an underrated shield on Flak, and something you saw a decent amount in Mayhem 3, but something that isn't too popular in Mayhem 4. So the red suit here, which we're going to get into soon, is essential for these large splash damage radius weapons. Options for the Protuberance if you can't get it, like I mentioned earlier. These are hard to come by, though you can find them pretty abundantly on trade forums. Like I said, the Insider. Another option is the Lob, which is a fantastic weapon and actually just deletes everything off the map. The Lob is another brilliant gun that's been buffed recently. Used to be a meme, is now a top tier meta gun. And the Lob will just obliterate everything. It's kind of crazy how much damage this thing does. And with the Gamma Burst Anoint in the radiation element, with the red suit, you can fire this around without a care in the world. You're not going to be blowing yourself up. You're just going to be killing everything in your path. So the Lob really is a fantastic legendary now, and is a great choice to use over the Protuberance if you cannot find it in game. Let's look at some other shotgun options, because there are heaps to go through. So we've got the Anarchies, and these are, once stacked up, the strongest weapon in the game. So if you just really want to run around and just delete everything in one shot, then the Anarchy, something like this Radiation Anarchy with Gamma Burst, is going to be the gun you're going to want to use. This is found in DLC 2 and can be farmed quite easily from the 2 mini bosses in the Heart's Desire, like I mentioned. So if you were looking for an Insider and you wanted to farm for the Anarchy at the same time, those bosses are a great option there for you. Yeah, this gun is crazy. I personally don't tend to use it too much, because I find that it just makes the game a bit too easy, and I still want to enjoy playing the game. I don't want it to be too easy. So the Anarchy is, for all intents and purposes, probably the best gun in terms of DPS on this build that you could use. But you know, I know some people don't really enjoy using it because it's a bit too easy. But with Mayhem 2.0 around the corner, maybe this is going to be necessary. Maybe we're going to need powerhouses like the Anarchy to get through those levels. We'll have to see, but this is certainly a great option for you to use if you are that way inclined. Some other shotgun options are the Tiggs Boom. These have been recently buffed over the last few months, and they are now actually fantastic. The meteors actually work as intended, and though they do have a pretty low magazine size, which is a bit of a difference to the Insider and the Protuberance, you'll notice that the damage you can get out of them with Flax and Megavore being able to crit the meteors that rain down from the Tiggs Boom can make them a fantastic mobbing and bossing tool, depending on the element. You're going to be wanting to look for one with a higher pellet count on these weapons, and that's because for each pellet you have a chance to proc the meteors spawning, so the more pellets the better in that sense. And there is going to be a ton of splash damage being dealt with this gun too, so you're going to want to use the radiation variant with the red suit to protect yourself against all that incoming splash damage, all that radiation damage, if you are playing close range. If you want to play from a distance, the red suit isn't required, and I'll get into that. I'll get into that a bit later when we cover shields. But yeah, so the Tiggs Boom are fantastic. For Wotan, we're going to get into a bossing variant of this setup soon, but the Corrosive Insider with consecutive hits is the choice for that fight, as well as the Corrosive Boom Sickle. So we've covered Tiggs Boom, we've covered Lobs. So that is the sort of alternative options you can consider in that shotgun slot there. Now moving on to the ARs. We have the Boom Sickle here, and this is fantastic. We're actually going to be switching up and using our Gamma Boom Sickle for the testing purposes of this video, but the Boom Sickle is amazing. It's essentially a shotgun in an AR, for those of you guys who may not have used it. It's one of the best guns in the game right now. It was recently buffed and is capable of doing crazy amounts of damage. Something really nice about the Boom Sickle and the synergy with the shotguns on this build is that it pulls from a different ammo pool than the shotguns, despite being treated like a shotgun for in terms of shotgun buffs. So it actually receives shotgun buffs from our class mod here. It receives not only shotgun but splash damage buffs, so that is going to really benefit the Boom Sickle, but it's nice because you're drawing from the large ammo pool of assault rifle as opposed to shotgun. Some of these shotguns can be fairly ammo hungry when you're using them, so it's nice to have a backup weapon on here that will pull from a different pool and help you out if you ever get low on shotgun ammo. Really fun to use, fantastic for proccing Megavore, head count, leave no trace, and yeah, just deletes everything, as you're going to see. So other options for the Gamma Burst, if you can't find a Gamma Burst variant, like I mentioned earlier, is the consecutive hits option. This is fantastic too. This works really nicely. It's kind of like it's got an inbuilt pearl built inside of it. Fantastic option for sure. The Pestilent Boom Sickle here, the corrosive variant, is really useful against Wotan. Can be really nice against robots too if you're having a tough time. But for the most part, radiation is going to tear through everything. But when it comes to Wotan, you're going to want to switch up to a powerful corrosive option, and that's the Boom Sickle is a great choice here. Obviously, Cryo is another fantastic choice as well if you want to mix it up in combat. But for the focus of this build, we are using solely radiation, as counterintuitive as that sounds. Next up, we have the lump here. Now, the lump in this last slot could be interchanged with a few different launchers. We've got some options here in the Scourge here, which is fantastic and is a bit more accessible than the lump. The lump can be tough to find at times, but if you're doing a lot of slaughter shaft farming, a lot of Wotan takedown runs, you are going to come across lumps. They do pop up every now and then, but certainly the Scourge is an easier one to come by and is just as effective. For sure, the lump might be a little bit better, but the Scourge is still a fantastic launcher and is going to come out, is going to kill enemies a bit faster than the lump does. Then we have one of my personal favorites, the Nukem. This is fantastic. This was a real center point of my Splash King Flak build, so if you guys have seen those videos, you'll remember this launcher and those kind of builds. But unlike that, when we were using racks to proc the on action skill and anointed effects, this time we're focusing on using it in a gamma burst setting, and this bonus radiation damage from the anointment here on this Nukem is gonna really pay off. You're gonna see huge, not only explosions from the Nukem, but you're gonna see those chain explosions from the radiation component of this gun. You will have to be careful about firing the Nukem up close because the kinetic damage will not be absorbed by the red suit. It will absorb the radiation component, but the kinetic damage will still smack you around if you're not careful. So the Nukem is so much fun to use and is a great option there in that launcher slot. But for this gameplay, we'll be using the lump. The lump is fantastic, really fun to use. Again, I have a consecutive hits variant in this as well, which I got dropped from the slaughter shaft, and is a great option, great alternative to the gamma burst variant here. You're going to be mobbing really nicely with this. Fantastic for mobbing. Not so good for bossing, but there are different options like the Nukem and the Scourge, which you can use for bossing, as well as the ion cannon if that's your kind of launcher. So those are the weapon choices. There's lots of flexibility between the different weapons you can use, but these are the weapons we're going to be running with. Now, shields, I covered shields earlier a little bit, but the red suit is going to be the main shield I like to run with on this build, and you're going to see we are using the bonus radiation on action skill N. This is because we are using the red suit. We don't want to stack other elements alongside radiation, as that won't be absorbed, that won't be negated by our red suit. If we were to stack corrosive with our radiation element, we'd be facing that corrosive tick in our splash damage that would be eating away at our shields. The same as if we were to do Cry, we'd be slowing ourselves down. So it's actually better to stack radiation on this build, and that really pays off in spades when you get into it. So the red suit here, this is actually a really good red suit because it's got the amp damage component on it, so it's got amp damage built into it. So every now and then you're going to be getting bonus 50% damage on your shots, and it's got a really fast recharge time, which is also impacted by the Guardian perk skills. So you're going to be recharging your shield after successful kills. But you don't really need to worry about getting a perfect red suit like this. If you can find just any red suit with a solid anointment, preferably the radiation anointment there, you're going to be finding you're going to be having good success with this build, because the amount of damage the gun's output is insane. Alternatives for the red suit, because the red suit works best when you're playing up close, when you're playing really aggressively with the shotguns, which is how the build is intended to function. That doesn't mean you can't use something like the Old God here, which is a great option for more mid to longer range combat. Can work really well with weapons like the Boom Sickle that you don't necessarily need to worry about taking a ton of splash damage if you're firing at something at mid-range, and will provide you with bonus 20% radiation damage, which is a nice boost, a nice consistent boost when compared to the I guess non-consistent or inconsistent boost from the amp component of the red suit. So really solid. It will provide you with some form of radiation resistance, though obviously not immunity like the red suit shield, but is a great option. Some more options for shields, especially if you're running the takedown. The transformer can be a good pick. The old god shield can work really well in the Wotan fight, but for the most part, I tend to just stick with the red suit here. So moving on to class mods now, we're going to be focusing on the Red Fang class mod, which is going to give our pet the ability to draw the aggro of enemies around its vicinity and that's going to take pressure off us whilst we run around with our crazy radiation weapons and blow everything up. I've speculated in some of my earlier videos that I feel that Gamma Burst Red Fang builds are going to be a cut above the rest when it comes to Mayhem 2.0 in these higher Mayhem levels, similar to OP levels, if that is how they work out. I think having that aggro pool is going to be really essential and something that a lot of players are going to enjoy, just taking the focus away from you as a player and shifting it onto your invincible pet. So it is really good to get used to that, get used to the mechanics now and before Mayhem 2.0 comes around, and I do recommend it for this build. Unlike some other builds, you don't need the extra damage from something like a Cosmic Stalker or a Deadeye on this build to work effectively. This build already has so much damage that the utility that the Red Fang provides is the superior choice here. You're going to find it's really helpful in stuff like the Malawan Takedown and in the Slaughter Shaft as well. Now we're going to jump to relics, and the relic slots, there's a bit of versatility in these slots, and it really does come down to playstyle preference. So for me, I've been really enjoying using the Atom Bomb auto idle. The Atom Bomb is something that sort of fell out of favor after Mayhem 3. When Mayhem 4 rolled around, people started to shift away from it. Certainly when the Pearl was released recently with DLC 2, that's been all the craze, everyone's using that, and for good reason. But on this build, the Atom Bomb really comes into its own. What the Atom Bomb does is it increases the dot damage that the radiation tick does over time. It increases the explosion damage from the radiation explosions when enemies die that are afflicted by the radiation dot, and it also increases the radius of that radiation explosion. So it's perfect for this build, honestly, and the auto idle component of it does give us some nice sustain, which is useful on a build like this. We also have, as you can see on this relic, like, you're going to want to be looking for rolls in area of effect damage, which is not only going to increase your splash damage but also your splash damage radius. It's actually built into that stat. It doesn't say so, but it actually does work that way. And you also want mag size. That radiation damage bonus there is just icing on the cake, but what you're looking for is mag size. It's a big quality of life improvement, and it is going to allow you some more DPS. You won't have to reload as often. It synergizes well with Leave No Trace, as you are going to be regenning ammo before you have to reload. If your magazine is higher, there's a higher chance of that happening. So really a great roll there on your relic. It's sort of essential on most relics. Other options for the Atom Bomb auto idle, which works fantastically with the red suit, is the Elemental Projector Victory Rush. So this is an option here that can be interchanged with the Atom Bomb. It works really well with the red suit because you are going to be dotting yourself with radiation damage whilst being immune to it. If you're running around with weapons like the Insider and the Protuberance, the Lob, the Boom Sickle, you're going to be dotting yourself with radiation damage. So if you want to take advantage of that and get that nice 103% damage boost, you certainly can. It's gonna do really well. I don't think it's necessary at all, to be honest. Like, I do tend to run with the Atom Bomb auto idle a lot, but if you're one of those players that prefers to use elemental projectors and the Victory Rush component of it, then it is a great choice for you there. As far as the Pearl goes, this is a great option to tack on when facing Wotan. It's not essential for the raid itself, but for the final boss fight versus Wotan, it can help you if if you're using something like a corrosive Boom Sickle or a corrosive Insider, which is what I recommend. Having the Pearl on there as well is just going to speed up the fight that much faster. The radiation components of the previous relics that I've covered aren't too effective versus Wotan because he is resistant to radiation. So having the Pearl on deck, it's easy to come across. You get it in the story if you play through DLC, DLC 2, and so it's very accessible to people, and it is one of the best relics in the game. But for general purpose mobbing and general bossing, you don't need to use the Pearl. It's unnecessary, it's overkill, and in most cases the Atom Bomb is actually better, and the Victory Rush are better in a lot of mobbing situations, because you aren't firing, like, if you're using the Insider or the Protuberance or launchers, you aren't firing like multiple pellets. In the Insider's case you are, I guess, but the radiation buffs of the prior two relics sort of outweigh the damage of the Pearl in those situations, so something to keep in mind. But moving on to the grenades, we're going to be using the Mitosis Hunter Seeker here with the on-action grenade throw. You gain that 25% bonus damage. This is what I'd recommend for most Gamma builds. We're not going to be stacking, like I mentioned earlier, the on-action skill and anointed effects, so like the elemental bonuses that you see on a lot of grenade and shield combos. We do for our shield, but for our grenade we are using that on grenade throw anoint, and that's going to give us some nice burst damage if we need it. The radiation damage on this grenade is actually pretty solid. Like, it's no joke, and it does scale. The damage does scale with your weapon damage from the bullets that the Hunter Seeker fires, which is really interesting. And that's also going to allow you to proc head count and leave no trace when the bullets proc Megavore from this grenade. So all around, this grenade synergizes really well with the build. It keeps that radiation damage tick going, and when paired with the Pearl, it's a nice way of keeping up those consecutive stacking bonuses. So definitely this grenade is something to look out for this build. You don't have to have this particular variant if you have any sort of Hunter Seeker. It can even be just a regular Hunter Seeker, but the more divider parts you can get, the better. And then we're going to jump into the skill tree. So we're going to kick it off with the red tree, the Hunter tree. And this time around, we are speccing out fully into Interplanetary Stalker. We're putting 2 points into Leave No Trace because it's not essential for this build, but it is nice to get a little bit of ammo regen. We've got 3 points into Second Intention, which is going to offer us a nice quality of life improvement, just increasing the speed in which our shotguns and launchers reload. That's really nice because sometimes you just want to keep fighting, so the quicker reloads you can get, the better. We got 3 out of 3 into head count. That is nice for speeding up the rate in which Gamma Burst comes back after it goes down. If you're using something like the Brainstormer in the raid, you're going to notice that you get Gamma back almost instantly, so that's a really useful skill to have invested in. Now these 5 out of 5 into Hunter's Eye, those points can be moved into Two Fang depending on what content you're running, depending on what weapons you're using. If you're running around mobbing with the Protuberance and with the launchers, then 5 out of 5 into Two Fang is a worthy thing to consider. If you guys saw my Splash King Flak build, I focused on abusing 10 out of 5 into Two Fang with the Dead Icon, and the results there are insane. But for the purpose of this build, 5 out of 5 into Hunter's Eye is going to give you some nice armor damage bonuses versus Wotan, so it's ideal for the raid. You're going to get critical hit damage bonuses versus human targets and damage reduction versus beasts, so it's a very useful skill to have. And depending on the content in the game, you're going to want to max that out or put points elsewhere. But for the purpose of running the raid, 5 out of 5 into Hunter's Eye is recommended. The rest of the tree is fairly standard. Big game, most dangerous game, all the way down to Megavore is pretty standard on Gamma builds and is definitely recommended. As far as the green tree goes, we are maxing out Furious Attack. This is a great DPS bonus skill that is buffed by Big Game. We've got 4 points into Eager to Impress from our class mod, which is going to speed up the rate in which we cool down Gamma Burst for getting kills outside of Gamma Burst, which is very easy to do with this build. So it's just going to mean Gamma Burst comes back even faster, and that shifts the focus away from you to your pet and provides you with noticeable damage increase. Moving on to the blue tree. It's a pretty standard blue tree spec, but unlike my previous builds that I've uploaded to the channel, we aren't investing in Hive Mind. We're putting more points into Who Rescued Who and actually speccing into Psycho Head on a Stick for this particular build. That is going to increase the rate that your pet will stack up Frenzy, which is useful. Keeping up Frenzy is a big damage boost and is really nice for flax damage overall. We're speccing into Barbaric Yob, 5 out of 5 of course, and Pack Tactics for that nice damage increase and health increase for us and our pets. And we have here 1 point into Mutated Defenses, and that's going to be nice to keep your pet up outside of Gamma Burst, which is going to in turn keep your damage bonuses that you get from the Fire Ant Scorcher up outside of Gamma Burst, which is important. We're also going to be getting 3% health regen per second, which is actually really nice. So the aggro will be shifted on our pet, and we will be getting a nice amount of sustain from that health regen plus the auto idle component of our relic. So that is going to be the skill tree spec. We're going to jump into the raid option, the raid sort of loadout that you can run when running the Malawan Takedown, specifically fighting Wotan, because that's the only time you really need to sort of tweak your gear loadout. So we're going to jump into that now. Alright guys, so after you've cleaned through the raid, you've blown everything up with all your crazy radiation weapons, you're going to want to switch your second slot up to either a Corrosive Insider with the consecutive hits anoint. I actually got this on my 4th attempt of farming the bosses in the Heart's Desire, or use something like the Corrosive Boom Sickle. These are 2 weapons that are going to perform really, really nicely. You can also use something like the Corrosive Soul Render, which I showed off in a recent build. Fantastic for the different Wotan phases. Essentially a strong corrosive weapon that is going to be able to target both Wotan and his upper half when they separate. In the 3rd slot, you'll want something like the Brainstormer to get past Wotan's shield phases. The Brainstormer works well, the Recursion is another option there. And in the 4th slot, I like to put on a launcher like the Scourge or the Nukem. Scourge can be really nice for shredding through the adds in the fight, as well as doing nice damage to Wotan. The Nukem can be used to actually blow up Wotan's upper half when they part from one another, if you can get the timing right. As far as the shields go, I like to switch up to a Corrosive Old God here. It's going to increase the corrosive damage that we do with the Boom Sickle and the Insider, which is noticeable. It's really nice. The Red Fang class mod stays the same here. We like that aggro pull on our pet, especially from Wotan and the different adds he spawns in. The only other change here is the Pearl. We're switching up from the Atom Balm or the Elemental Projector over to the Pearl for this one. That bonus consecutive damage stacking is going to stack with the Insider, the consecutive hits on the Insider or whichever weapon you're using here. So that's really nice. You're going to see huge DPS output there from the Pearl. It really does work nicely in this fight. So that is going to be the boss loadout. As you can see, it doesn't switch up too much. You can use whatever strong corrosive weapon you want, but I would recommend something like the Insider or the Corrosive Boom Sickle. They do work really nicely versus Wotan. So that is going to be the build. We're going to jump into some gameplay and show you guys how the build functions in action. Alright guys, so if you did enjoy, make sure you drop a like on the video and leave your thoughts on the build in the comments below. I would love to hear some feedback on this build, and I'm sure Daren will be checking the comments and interacting with you guys down there. So let me know, let Daren know what you guys think of the build. Make sure you guys are subscribed to the channel for future content. There's going to be a lot of builds coming out with Mayhem 2.0, all this new challenging content for us to overcome. So if you guys want to see more of these, make sure you're subscribed. And yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Hope you guys enjoy the gameplay, and I'll catch you next time.
Tear them apart!
Oh, Ramstein, that's a blast from the past. Oh, the pig score thing, yeah. Don't worry, bro, it's not much of a claim.
Roll right over them!
Target! Light that giant bastard up!
It's time to fight! You there, how are your best friends? My girl is down! We're fighting you yet.